So, you want to save the world with clean energy? Make money doing it? Confused about the economic and technical realities of residential and commercial solar, batteries, heat pumps, EVs? Want the real-world scoop on new energy technologies, not manufacturer hype? Then tune in to the Weekly Energy Show, hosted by Barry Cinnamon. Insights from Barry's 40-plus years in the solar and energy industry will help you understand the future ways we'll generate and consume energy. And now, here's Barry.
Welcome to this week's Energy Show. Now, the big news in the solar and storage industry is that there's lots of new battery systems on the market. I saw over 100 different batteries and systems on display at the Renewable Energy Plus show in Vegas in September. So how do you pick the right battery for your home or your business? Now, just a little bit of background about this show. Over 40,000 people were in Las Vegas this year at the Renewable Energy Plus show. It's starting to remind me of the Comdex shows that I used to go to in Las Vegas for years and years. I've been going to this national solar trade show for 21 years. It started in 2004. It was called Solar Power International. It was just renamed last year to the Renewable Energy Plus show. Every year at the Solar Power International show, there'd be new solar panels, new racking, new inverters. Batteries started creeping in about 7 or 8 years ago. Now, with so many batteries and energy-saving electronics and special utility-scale products, racking system services, it's not just solar anymore. So I kind of came back from the show. It's exhausting, but I came back from the show with 3 main themes. First, battery systems for all markets, residential, commercial, and utility. Huge trackers for the utility markets. This is the biggest market in the country, that there's just solar systems on trackers going in at utilities all over the countries, and almost all of them now are going in at the same time with battery systems. And then the third trend is all kinds of clever new energy electronics products and services, obviously incorporated with software. So on this week's show, we're going to be discussing the battery systems that really caught my eye, with a special focus on home systems that are ready to go and are ready to work reliably. And these systems are going to basically give homeowners 2 benefits: home backup power and additional savings on utility bills. Now, we're going to talk about commercial battery systems, trackers, new electronics on one of our upcoming shows. Now, it's unfortunate that many people simply believe manufacturer hype and brochures about their batteries. It's a really common approach to slap a brand name on a battery or come up with a new battery system from a well-known solar panel or inverter company. And these companies are experienced in the solar industry. They're going to come out with their own batteries that'll work with their solar panels or inverters or things like that. And obviously, in order to convince people to buy it, you need a nice block diagram of the components with a little line between the battery and the inverter and the solar and the control system and everything else. And you need some software, but that doesn't really reflect it. That's not on the brochures. And you need to show some nice, pretty boxes on display at these trade shows. Now, these boxes are empty because in many cases there's nothing inside, and even if there is something inside, it may not be working yet. In reality, all of that stuff, the brochures, the block diagrams, the boxes, it's all completely worthless when it comes to a functional, reliable battery system. These functional, reliable battery systems that I would recommend for homeowners are really complicated to make and debug. It takes years to get them to the market. And experienced solar and battery installers know that it takes time to bring a really good product to the market that's mature, that will work for customers. So, for anyone interested in a battery system, I'm focusing on homeowners, but this also applies to commercial customers, you're going to get 2 benefits. You're going to save money on your utility bills, especially now in California under Net Metering 3, where you don't get a big reimbursement for selling power back to the grid during the day. You get peanuts, 2 or 3 cents. So it's important to save your energy during the day. But also for backup power during the more and more frequent blackouts that we're experiencing in California. And I am sure that this trend of blackouts is going to continue because the utilities aren't keeping up with maintaining the grid, and there are more weather events that are causing grid outages. So listen carefully about these recommendations. First and foremost, you need a battery system, not just a battery. That's why it's laughable to me to see hundreds of batteries on the floor of the show. And it's like, are they really working in a complete system? Almost none of them are. I get dozens of emails every single week from battery companies all over the world that they're offering a new home battery, a new battery system. They have the greatest, cheapest, bestest battery that are being marketed. It's all worthless without a completely integrated system. And when I'm talking about a completely integrated battery system, obviously that includes the battery. It includes the battery control system. It includes the inverter. It includes a transfer switch so that it operates during a blackout. Because if it doesn't operate in a blackout, you're losing half the benefit of the product. It includes enclosures to contain all these components. They're never in one box because it's just too heavy. And lots of software and firmware to make all these components work properly. This is the important thing. It's extremely important that all the major electronic components are controlled by one company. I'm not saying that they all need to be made in the exact same factory, but they need to be under the complete control of one company that's operating the complete system. I can't emphasize this point enough. Battery system components are not plug and play like solar panels. Every solar panel can work with every inverter, and they're not plug and play like computer printers. Every computer printer works with almost every computer, although you got to fiddle around with device drivers. There's an extraordinary amount of software integration required to make all these components work together. It's not just like the battery talking to the battery control system. They all have to communicate together. So when I start opening up equipment boxes from these new vendors and see one company making the battery, another company making the inverter, another company making the transfer switch or the gateway, another company helping out with the software, I kind of tune out, respectful as I can be. But to me, they're not completely addressing the complete system. They may have it together in 6 to 12 months, but I'm going to be patient. So that's the most important thing. Second most important thing is buying your complete battery system from an established company. The company has to have a U.S. office and a fully staffed office with people all over the country to provide support, not just a P.O. box and a WhatsApp phone number. You have to have local support in order to really kind of get going. And that's why a lot of these companies, even if a big company gets in the market, they're going to start in 1 or 2 regions where they really can kind of get things fine-tuned because you need local support. Now, I know I'm a techie. It's appealing to buy the latest technology from a really cool startup. But to use the system to make it really work in your home or business, there is an absolute maze of regulations, requirements, certifications, and inspections that need to be complete. And the installer and the battery company need to jump through all of these crazy regulatory hoops. It's expensive. It can take a year or 2 to get through all that. So that new cool tech that you may see at a show or somebody may demonstrate for you, or you see it in, one test site, may not be kosher for the local building inspector. It may not be acceptable to the local utility. And so you put this thing in and you find out, gee, I can turn it on, it works, but I really can't use it because it's not official yet. Every single local code requirement and regulation has to be met, and they're different all over the country. So that's complicated. That's why it takes, you just can't say, hey, it's working here in Silicon Valley, and then it's going to work in New York City. That's really tricky. So I often like to say that it takes an army to sell a successful battery system. You need a big cash balance sheet in order to make these investments, and you need good investors to back you up, or being part of a big public company. It literally, I'm not exaggerating, it's going to take hundreds or thousands of people in all the different departments of the battery system company to deliver a system that's going to make homeowners and commercial customers comfortable. Hundreds or thousands of people in hardware design, supply chain management, manufacturing, software. There's like 3 or 4 layers of software, marketing, sales, customer service. If you don't have all this in place, then you're not going to be able to ramp up. And that's why I'm kind of cautioning people to make sure that the battery system company that they select has all this in the background. So battery system companies need this army to ramp up manufacturing, sales, and service. You can't be successful in this market on a shoestring. Third, you need a contractor, an installer that knows how to install, configure, and support the system. It's not just hanging boxes on the wall and wiring them together like the instruction manual says. They have to be configured, and it's tricky, and then they have to be supported. These systems, first of all, battery systems, have to be integrated with a building's electrical system. So it's usually an electrician or a solar company with electricians on staff that can do this. And successful solar contractors have these electrical skills. They've been doing it for 50 years. And it's also good because the solar contractors naturally connect the rooftop solar system to the battery system. It's kind of ironic how this has evolved, just as a quick digression. Electricians like to do electrical work. They don't like to climb on roofs. So one of my best electricians here said, Barry, my knees are kind of old. I don't really want to be climbing up a ladder and kneeling and working on the roof, wiring up the solar panels. That's for the young guys. So successful contractors have teams of guys that work on the roof that are really good at that, and then teams of electrical workers who are electricians or electrically trained that actually do the wiring. And these contractors also have to pass manufacturer certification requirements and classes and know how to kind of get all this to work. And it's tricky. Even from systems that have been out for a year or two, they come out with new features. There's constantly new training required to be fully qualified to configure these things efficiently in the field. The battery systems are especially complicated. Heck, it used to be in the solar industry. I'd connect up an inverter. I needed 3 wires. I needed 2 hots and a ground. Now there's probably 30 or 40 separate wiring connections, at least, that need to be made. High voltage, low voltage, AC, DC, communications, all these connections need to be made in order to get these systems working. And then the other tricky thing is the contractor has to know how to work with the local inspectors, the local utilities, the local safety requirements. And I'll be candid with you, even experienced battery system contractors are challenged to keep up with all the new features of the popular energy storage systems that they sell and install. We're always doing constant training. So in my humble opinion, I'm sorry if I'm accusing myself of being humble, but in my humble opinion, there are fewer than a dozen companies delivering battery system products in the U.S. that have the staffing and financial resources to really scale and meet the needs of home customers. And only a handful have successfully penetrated the U.S. market. A handful. So that leads me to the question that I'm really trying to answer in this podcast, how homeowners have. The most popular question: what's the best home battery system for me? Well, after going through the requirements that I've outlined previously, it kind of depends on what you want. So from a total market standpoint, I'd like to look at data from an organization called Analytics, and they kind of look at the market share for different battery systems, and that market share will generally show you which companies are getting traction. And candidly, when I look back at the market, I see some companies that come out with a splash just because they have a really big name and they're selling a lot of batteries, and they get some decent market share, and then they fade away because they really don't have all the background and backup and support to scale with a really, really good system. In the most recent Analytics survey that I've seen, the major battery system companies in the U.S. are Tesla, SolarEdge, SunPower, Enphase, Generac, and Franklin. Well, that's 6. That's one more than a handful. So that's about it. Now let's kind of take a look at a subset of that group where I have a lot of experience. And I'm just going to kind of go through these companies in alphabetical order. I'm not providing any preferences to others. I'm just going to kind of say, hey, from my perspective as an installer that's installing a lot of battery systems here in Silicon Valley, here's what I see. Enphase, really good for small systems. And because it's a modular product, and you can put in a system that starts at, I think that the most recent number is about 5 kilowatt hours. So you can put a 5, a 10, a 15, a 20. You can kind of ramp these things up. So really good for small systems, very popular for new construction, very popular for townhomes and situations like that where you might not need a really big battery system or your needs are somewhat modest. The big question that a lot of our customers want is they want to do whole home backup. And the best product on the market right now that I see, and we're having really customers love it, is from Franklin Whole Home. The company's been around for a number of years. They tick off all the boxes that I mentioned earlier. And the reason why they're really good for home backup, and they're the only ones that are doing that, is their system has what's called integrated load shedding. They have smart circuit breakers built into their system so that if there's a blackout or unusual conditions, those smart circuit breakers can automatically turn off big appliances in your house that would otherwise make it more difficult to do whole home backup. So, for example, if there's a blackout, these smart circuit breakers in the Franklin system, integrated load shedding, automatically will turn off your air conditioning system or your heat pump and maybe your EV charger. And that's really important for blackout protection, because if you kept trying to run those appliances during a blackout, they would drain the battery really quickly. And then you wouldn't have enough power for your TV and your internet, which would be a disaster in my house. So their system is also really easy to install. It's well designed. Everything's integrated. Yeah, it's kind of great on every single dimension. The only thing is it's a little bit on the heavy side, but experienced installers know how to manage heavy battery installations. Okay, next company, this is alphabetical. Most battery capacity in the smallest space. This is SolarEdge with their new home battery. Now, the thing is that most battery systems on the market, the smallest ones I mentioned, Enphase, SolarEdges are about 10 kilowatt hours. Tesla and Franklin are 13.5 or so, and LG, which also works in certain ways with SolarEdge, is 16 kilowatt hours. But most systems, they can't be stacked together closely, and there's special UL 9540A regulations that make it difficult to put batteries really close together. So SolarEdge has passed all those tests the best of anybody else. So if you needed to put in 30 kilowatt hours of battery capacity in a relatively small space, they're the best ones. And there's nobody else that really can do that right now. It's kind of bizarre. But you need like a lot of space, or you have to put those extra batteries farther away from the house, which in many cases you just can't do. Now, the other big advantage with the SolarEdge system, it's the most efficient because it's DC coupled. Now we're getting into some crazy terminology here, DC coupled versus AC coupled. I apologize for that, but that's what we use in the industry. DC coupled systems mean that you charge the battery directly from DC power from your solar panels. Everything's running with DC. So that battery can accept DC from the solar panels, which is great. On AC coupled systems, in order to charge the batteries, pretty much everybody else uses AC coupled systems, you have to take the DC solar power, invert it into AC power, and then rectify that AC power back to DC to charge the battery. These other systems typically have 2 inverters, whereas SolarEdge just has 1. So you have a solar inverter and you have a battery inverter. SolarEdge kind of combined those two. Other companies are trying to do it, but right now they're the only ones on the market that I'm really comfortable with to do this. And so the result is DC coupled architecture means that you have at least a 5% advantage in efficiency, because when you've got solar coming down from the roof, it can go to directly charge the battery. As opposed to an AC coupled system, solar comes down from the roof, goes into an AC inverter. Then in order to charge the battery, you need to rectify that, and you lose 5% in that process to charge the battery. So that's crazy. So, but they have an advantage there. It's a pretty good product. All right. Now, least expensive, best brand is Tesla. They're also by far and away the biggest companies. They make cars, by the way. They announced the Powerwall 3 at the show, got a lot of attention, very, very cool product, but they're saying it's not going to be available for at least a year. In 2024, summer 2024, later in 2024. I just have a perspective. I have something called Tesla time, and usually if they say, a date, it's going to be longer. That's the experience. But very cool product, and I think it's going to give everybody else a really good run for the money. So those are kind of the 4 that I'm really comfortable with. If you're looking for a battery system for your home, either for blackout protection or to save more money on your utility bills, remember these 3 things. First, get a complete battery system, not just a battery, and make sure all the parts are made by the same company. Second, the company from whom you buy the system, make sure it's an established company. And that's why these big established companies with big balance sheets, they can afford to make all the components and integrate them with software. Third, work with an experienced local solar and storage contractor and get their advice. Very dangerous. It happens to us all the time. Somebody sees a new product out there. Hey, I'm going to get that. What do you think? And we're like, well, looks really cool, but the ones that we can really get behind, there's a much, much smaller list. Okay. Batteries will make a lot of sense for you. They're going to save you a lot of money. They're going to bail you out in terms of the increasingly frequent blackouts. And that's why we're so enthusiastic about these solutions for customers. All right. That's all the time we have on this week's Energy Show. Thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. And if you missed any of today's show, you can always go to our website at energyshow.biz and listen to the podcasts.